In this country today, there is a huge controversy over gun laws and the Second Amendment right. People arguing that there is too much restriction and others arguing that there isn't enough restrictions. My argument on this fact is that there is way too much restriction on the gun rights of this country. I fully believe in the Second Amendment right the way it was written, not the way it is trying to be interpreted today. With regards to the restrictions that are being placed on our right to bear arms, even though the amendment does say that it cannot be impeded, the courts have ruled that it doesn't say that it cannot be regulated, which I'm okay with because of our technology today, to a point. I don't think that law-abiding citizens should have their rights impeded on, but I do think that criminals should not be able to get their hands on guns. So with our technology today, we can regulate who is allowed to have weapons and who is not. Only by records, not by what the government's personal opinion on the matter is. They still should not be able to impede the people who have not broken the law. So I'm okay with the government regulating who can have weapons and who cannot, but that only fixes half of the problem. Yes, you cannot buy a gun if you have committed certain crimes, but what about the people that have not committed any crimes yet? There is no telling who that is. For example, a man was shot and killed in a movie theater not that long ago for refusing to stop texting during the movie. Sounds like something a crazy person that should never been allowed to have a weapon would do, right? Well, you'd be wrong. The person that committed this crime was not a street thug or a career criminal. It was a retired police officer that had a spotless record. There were no signs that he would have ever done anything like that. So that just goes to prove that even the best people can lose their minds, but that kind of stuff doesn't happen all that often. So more laws would not help the crime problem or increase safety on the streets. All it would do is harm the law-abiding citizens that follow the law. Plus, how many criminals do you know that follow the laws? Not too many, or else they wouldn't be called criminals. Also, looking at the articles and the studies that I have found, areas where more citizens carry concealed weapons in public places have a less crime and murder rate. This could be for the simple reason that if criminals know others around them might have a weapon, then they just might be less likely to commit a crime. Now let's look at the Second Amendment itself. As it says, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now you have to look at it from today's point of view, still looking at it from how the Founding Fathers wrote it, but in today's society. When they said a well-regulated militia, that meant an obligated body of men in the country that owned their own guns and were ready to come together and fight for the freedom of the United States, whether that be against a foreign power or a domestic tyrant. But today, that is supposed to be the National Guard. But the National Guard falls under the Department of Defense and has to follow the orders of the governor of the state and the President of the United States, which means it would be considered treason for the National Guard to rise up against the federal government. So with that in mind, who is left to protect the American people from our own government? That would be the citizens of this country. So the citizens would now be that militia. Just to prove this point with some proof from one of the men who helped write the Second Amendment, George Washington. He said, "A free people ought not to be armed and disciplined, but they should have sufficient arms and ammunition to maintain a status of independence from any who might attempt to abuse them, which would include their own government." Now that is from one of the men who wrote the Constitution. I don't think that he was confusing in what they meant by the amendment at all.